You are losing money. Now. Today. Right now. And the worst, you don't realize it's not because you're lazy. It's not because you don't work. It's not because you don't have talent. It's because there is an invisible pattern within you. A micro habit that operates in the dark every day, silently destroying any chance of building real wealth. And this pattern was installed in you long before you were aware of it. If you don't identify this error today, it will continue to sabotage you tomorrow, next month, 10 years from now. Stay here. What I'm going to reveal in the next few minutes may be the most important thing you've ever heard about money. My name doesn't matter as much as what I'm going to say. The point is that I spent more than 4 decades studying ancient texts, the Torah, the Talmud, the writings of the wise men of Babylon, the proverbs of the Phoenician merchants, the teachings of Stoic philosophers who built empires. Not as a hobby, like obsession. Because at a young age I realized something that most people never realize. The biggest money secrets are not in modern finance books. They're not in online courses. They're not on social media. They're buried in texts written millennia ago by men who observed human behavior for centuries and discovered patterns that we moderns simply ignore. And one of those patterns, it's what's destroying you financially. Today, I will reveal 3 things. 3 truths that most people never hear because no one is interested in telling you. But I say, because the truth, even when it hurts, is the only thing that sets you free. And pay special attention to the 3rd point. The 3rd is the most dangerous of all. Let me describe your life. You work, maybe a lot, maybe more than it should. At the end of the month, the money disappears, sometimes before the month is over. You look at the bill and think, where did it go? You have plans. You have dreams. You want a better life for yourself, for your family. But there is a constant feeling that you are running in circles, that no matter how hard you try, something always appears to knock you down. An unexpected bill, an emergency, an unforeseen event. And over time, you start to believe that maybe it's not for you. What wealth is for others, that you're just unlucky. Does this resonate with you? If so, you are not alone. And most importantly, this is not your fault. But, and listen to this carefully, it's also no accident. There is a specific, identifiable, fixable reason why this happens. And that reason is within you, not outside, not in the government, not in the economy, not the boss. Inside you, in a pattern that you repeat every day without realizing it. A micro habit, an automatic behavior that sabotages every penny before it has a chance to grow. The sages had a name for this. They called it the crack in the jar. I will explain what this means shortly. And when you understand, you will never look at money the same way again. I'll tell you a story. It's not a metaphor. It really happened. When I was in my early 20s, I went to study with a master. A man in his 70s who had lived in 3 different countries, spoke 6 languages, and had studied finance, philosophy, and sacred texts for decades. He was not rich in the sense that most imagine. He didn't have a yacht. There was no mansion. But I never saw that man with financial concerns. Never. In all the years I lived with him. One day I came to him desperate. I had just lost a business opportunity. I had worked for months on a project, invested time, energy, and at the last moment, everything fell apart. I was left with nothing. I was angry, with shame, and completely lost. I came to him and said, "Master, I don't understand. I work, I strive, I do what needs to be done. Why doesn't the money stay?" He looked at me for a long time without saying anything. Then he got up, went to the kitchen, and came back with a clay jar. It filled with water in front of me. He placed it on the table and waited. After a few minutes, a puddle of water began to appear under the jar. There was a fissure, small, almost invisible. He said, "Look, you keep filling up. The water keeps coming out. The jar is never full, not because you don't add enough water, but because he never fixed the crack." I was silent. He continued, "Your problem is not income. Your problem is the crack. And the crack isn't in your work. It's not in the market. The crack is in your relationship with money. How you think, how you act, how you feel when money appears." Then he said something I've never forgotten. "The money doesn't go to those who work the most. The money goes to those who have learned not to push it away." That day, my life changed. Not immediately. Not magically. But I started studying what he was saying. I went to the ancient texts. I went to behavioral psychology. I went to Stoic philosophy. I went to the Talmud. And I found, in all these places, the same truth described in different ways. Human beings sabotage their own prosperity, not out of malice, by default. And this pattern has specific characteristics, identifiable, and, this is the most important thing, fixable. Before I reveal the 3 main points, I need to destroy something. A belief you probably carry, which most people carry, and it's destroying you financially. Ready? The belief is this: if I work more, I will earn more. If I earn more, I will be rich. It seems obvious. It seems logical. It's a lie. I'm not saying work doesn't matter. I'm saying that work alone doesn't build wealth. Do you know why? Because most people who work more spend more, automatically, without realizing it. As if there were an internal thermostat that regulates how much money a person allows to remain in their hands. Behavioral psychologists call this the financial set point. The ancient texts had a simpler expression: man spends up to the level of his inner worth. Translation: you spend according to how much deep down you believe you deserve to have. If deep down you believe it's not for you, you will unconsciously find ways to get rid of money. An impulsive expense, a hasty decision, an emergency that always appears. This is not a lack of willpower, it's programming. And now I'm going to show you how this programming operates, on 3 levels that most people never examine. And when we get to the 3rd level, a lot of things will make sense in a way that will bother you, in a good way. First point, the invisible leak habit. The first micro-habit that destroys wealth is what I call invisible leakage. There is a concept in Talmudic texts called bittul zman, literally translated as nullification of time. Medieval rabbis used this expression to describe when someone wastes the most precious resource they have. They talked about time, but the principle applies equally to money, because most people don't lose money in major disasters. You lose it in small leaks that you never notice. How exactly does this happen? You know that coffee you buy every day? I'm not talking about the coffee itself. I'm talking about the mentality behind it. It's the mentality of, it's little, it doesn't make a difference. It's only 15 rays. It's just this purchase. It's just this once. And this is where most fail, because every financial decision you make, no matter how small, is not just a transaction. It's a vote. It's a signal you send to yourself about who you are and how you relate to money. When you say it's just $15, it doesn't matter. You are voting, repeatedly, for the belief that small amounts don't deserve attention. And this belief, deeply installed, will manifest itself when the amounts are larger, because you don't act differently with big money. You act the same way you act with small money, only on a larger scale. The wise men said, as a man acts with 1 coin, he will act with 1,000. That's not a pretty metaphor. It is a law of behavior. How do people go wrong here? They believe they need more money to start being responsible. They say, when I earn more, then I will organize it. But that never happens, because the standard that operates with little money will operate with more money, only with greater consequences. The consequence is simple. People never build reserves. It never has a base. Any wind knocks it down. How to fix? Start treating every dollar as if it were 100, not as greed, like respect. There's a fundamental difference between pettiness and conscience. Conscience is knowing where every penny goes, not to torture yourself, to have control. Specific practice. Over the next 7 days, write down every expense you make. Everything. Not to judge, to see, because you can't fix what you don't see. This is what the texts called heshbon ha-nefesh, soul searching. The sages did this spiritually, examining actions and thoughts. You will make it financially, and you will be surprised by what you find. Second point, the confusion between appearance and reality. The second micro-habit is more subtle and more dangerous for most people. I'll call it the appearing rich trap. There's a distinction that the Stoic philosophers made, especially Epictetus, who was born a slave and became one of the greatest thinkers of his time, between what is yours and what is not yours. He said, what people think of you is not yours. What you have in your pocket is yours. What you have in your mind is yours. But most people completely reverse this. You spend what should be yours, real money, to control what will never be yours. The opinion of others. Let me be direct. You buy clothes to impress, buy a car to impress, buy expensive dinner to impress, buy gadgets, devices, objects, to look like someone you're not yet. And every time you do this, you are literally selling your future freedom for the present approval of people who, for the most part, don't matter. This is destroying your financial life. There is a proverb in the Talmud that says, whoever pretends to be what he is not, loses what he is. Think about it. When you spend to appear rich, you become poorer. When you act rich, saving, investing, building, you become richer even though you look less. This is where most fail. Modern culture celebrates appearance. Social media rewards appearance. Every system around you is built to make you spend on appearance. And you, without realizing it, are paying for the system with your freedom. How do people go wrong here? They believe that showing prosperity attracts prosperity. They need to appear successful to be treated as successful. This has a grain of truth. But when it becomes a compulsion, it becomes a trap. The appearance becomes the end, not the means. And the person goes into debt to support a fiction. The consequence is growing debts, constant stress, the permanent feeling that the floor could give way at any moment. Because it can. Because there is no base, just a facade. How to fix? The ancient teaching is surgical. Separate what is necessary from what is status. Necessary is what solves a real problem. Status is what solves an ego problem. Ask yourself before every purchase, am I buying this because I need it or because I want someone to think something of me? This question, asked honestly, will save you from an absurd amount of unnecessary expenses, and it will start to close the crack in the jar. But the third one is where most people never get to, because it's deeper, older, and more devastating. Third point, the unconscious relationship with money. We have reached the third point, and I will ask you to stay here. Don't pause, don't jump. Because what I'm going to say now is the root of everything I said before. It's the original crack. The texts of Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism, have a fascinating concept called tzimtzum. It means contraction, withdrawal. The idea that for something to grow, it needs to create space. The sages applied this to spirituality, but it applies perfectly to money. And here is the insight that took me decades to fully understand. Most people, unconsciously, are afraid of money. Not what you think. Don't be afraid of being poor. Fear of getting rich. This is absurd, you might think. Who would be afraid of getting rich? Almost everyone. And I will prove it to you. Have you ever received more money than expected? A bonus, a good sale, a bigger freelance, and in a few weeks that money is gone? Not for a catastrophe. It disappeared into things, in small expenses, nothing. This was no accident. It was your internal system regulating it, getting back to the level of money you feel safe with. It feels familiar. Psychologists call it financial homeostasis. Ancient texts called it the measure of the heart. And this measure was formed long before you were aware of it. In childhood, in the stories you heard about money, in the fights you witnessed, in the phrases repeated inside the house, money doesn't grow on trees. Rich people are dishonest. We are not from a money family. This is not for us. These phrases were installed as programming, and they still run inside you. Every time money starts growing beyond your comfort level, something in you finds a way to let it go. Consciously, you want more. Subconsciously, you do your best to stay where you are. This is destroying your financial life, not the market, not the economy, you, your internal system. And the most disturbing thing is this. You can learn everything about finance, budgeting, investing, planning, and still be broke. Because the problem is not one of knowledge, it's permission. You don't allow yourself to have it. Medieval sages said that before a man can receive a blessing, he must become a suitable recipient for it. A leaky jar cannot hold water. It doesn't matter how many times you fill it. How do people go wrong here? They seek more information when the problem is internal transformation. They take more courses, read more books, and stay in the same place because they add content without examining the pattern that is operating underneath it all. The consequence is eternal cycles of progress and regression. 2 steps forward, 2 steps back. The feeling that it never arrives, which is always almost there. There's just one more thing missing. Always one more thing. How to fix? This starts with a question that few have the courage to ask. What do I believe, deep down, would happen if I really be well off? Sit with this question. Write down what appears. Because whatever appears, the excuses, the fears, the stories, is the fissure. It is the standard that needs to be examined and replaced. Then replace each limiting belief with a consciously constructed affirmation. Not like magic, like targeting, like you redirecting your internal system. The sages called it teshuvah, return, renewal, the ability of human beings to rewrite themselves. You have this ability. The question is whether you will exercise it. There's a law that the ancients knew and that modernity has forgotten. I'll call it the law of the container. It works like this. Money doesn't go where it's needed most. Money goes where it is most valued, most respected, most protected. Think of a plant. You can throw the best seed in the world on arid, stony ground with no nutrients. She won't grow up. Not because the seed is bad, because the soil is not prepared. You are the soil. As long as your soil, your mind, your habits, your relationship with money is dry and stony, the financial seeds will not grow. It doesn't matter how many opportunities appear. It doesn't matter how much you work. The Phoenicians, the richest people of the ancient world, had a principle that governed all their affairs. They said, before building the port, study the currents. It meant, before seeking wealth, understand the forces that move wealth, understand the invisible pattern. And the most important invisible pattern is this: money responds to the attention you give, to the intention you set, the care with which you treat what you already have. This is not cheap mysticism. It is behavioral psychology described in different language. When you neglect what you already have, don't write it down, don't keep track of it, don't value it, you create a pattern of neglect that repeats itself on a larger scale. When you take care of what you already have, no matter how small it is, you create a pattern of care that expands. Sacred texts describe this differently in different cultures. The Torah says, to what he has, more will be given. The Tao Te Ching says, the wise do not accumulate. The more you give, the more you have. The Stoics say, wealth is not in what you have, but in what you don't need. All these traditions, separated by millennia and continents, reach the same conclusion. Wealth begins within, it manifests itself outside, and the unconscious micro-habit, the mistake you make without realizing it, is living as if it were the opposite, as if it were just a question of money coming in, not how you relate to it. The crack in the jar is not a lack of money. Craving is the way you think, feel, and act in relation to money, and this crack can be repaired. Now listen carefully. What I'm about to say is not a miraculous promise. It's not get rich in 30 days, but it's real, and it is testable. If you apply the 3 principles I revealed today, starting now, this week, you will notice a change, not necessarily in the bank balance immediately, but something more important, how you feel about money. Anxiety will decrease, clarity will increase, you will start to see where the money is going, you will start to make conscious choices instead of automatic ones, and when that happens, the balance starts to reflect that, gradually, consistently, because you will have started to repair the crack. The wise men said that the journey of 1,000 miles begins with 1 step, but the step needs to be taken in the right direction. You now know the direction. The next step is yours. I'll give you a protocol. Simple, based on the principles we discussed. No application required. Does not require money, it just requires intention and discipline. First practice, the daily exam. Every night before bed, write down 3 things. How much came in today? How much came out today? Where did each expense go? Not to judge yourself, to see. Doing this for 30 days will reveal patterns you never noticed. Leakage patterns, impulsivity patterns, avoidance patterns. What you see can change. What remains in the dark continues to operate freely. The sages called it a heshbon. Accountability, it was a sacred practice. You will do this with your finances. Second practice, the 24-hour rule. For any unplanned purchase above a value that you define yourself. It could be 50 rees, 100, 200. Wait 24 hours. Just that. Most of the time, after 24 hours, the impulse passes. You realize you didn't want the object. I wanted the feeling I imagined the object would bring. This is what philosophers call dissociation from desire, the ability to see desire without being controlled by it. It is one of the most powerful skills a human being can develop, and it's completely free. Third practice, the value statement. This comes directly from Kabbalistic teachings on intention. Before making any significant financial decision, saving money, investing, making a large purchase, make a simple statement out loud or in writing. Say, I make this decision consciously with the intention of building my freedom. It seems simple. It even seems naive. But what you're doing is creating a moment of pause between impulse and action. It's putting awareness where there was automatic before. And it is exactly in this space, between impulse and action, that your financial freedom will be built or destroyed. Fourth practice, the act of honoring what you have. Set aside every week, even if it's a small amount, to save. Untouchable. Not to invest yet. Not for a specific goal yet. To create the habit of saving. To send the message to your internal system that you are someone who preserves. The oldest prosperity texts, from virtually every tradition, have one thing in common. The wise man always keeps a part. Always. Regardless of how much you earn. No, because you'll get rich quick from that part, but because this act creates identity. You become someone who keeps. And a resource guardian identity will manifest itself in all of your subsequent decisions. Before I close, I need something from you. Not a like, not a subscription. Although both will help me continue to bring this to more people, I need a commitment. If what I said today resonated with you, if you recognized at least one of the patterns I described, write in the comments. I protect my prosperity. 5 words. But they are not empty words. They are a statement. They are the beginning of a new intention. The sages believe that words have weight, that when you consciously declare something, you are beginning an alignment process, aligning your intentions, your focus, your actions. So if you're ready to start repairing the crack, write, I protect my prosperity, and then read the comments of others who wrote the same, because there is strength in knowing that you are not alone on this journey. Let me finish with one last thing. In ancient texts, there is an idea that crosses cultures, millennia, and traditions. The idea that each human being is born with a specific potential, with a unique contribution capacity, with a form of prosperity that is yours, not anyone else's. And the tragedy The real tragedy is not the person who tries and fails. It's the person who never tried, who was paralyzed by fears, by standards, for the inner voice that said it wasn't for her, who reached the end of his life with his potential untouched, with the jug never full, with prosperity never built. You don't have to be that person. The fissures we describe today, the invisible leak, the appearance trap, the fear disguised as wealth, they are real. They operate on you. But they are not permanent. You have the ability to examine them, to name them, to replace them with something truer, more conscious, more yours. Money is just a tool, but the way you relate to this tool reveals who you are and determines who you will become. The wise did not accumulate wealth out of vanity. They accumulated to have freedom, to be able to help, to build something that would last beyond them. This is the oldest vision of prosperity that exists, and it starts with a decision that only you can make. The decision to stop sabotaging, to stop leaking, to start building with awareness, with intention, with respect for what you already have. The jar is in your hands. The crack can be repaired. The time is now.